Hello, and thanks for joining us on the very first episode of Let's Talk. Now, in this episode, we're going to be sitting down with Mark Young. You guys have all come to know him as the opinion writer for Manatee Herald, and today you get to meet the man behind the words. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. He's an Army veteran, he's an experienced journalist, he's a conservative Republican, and he tells it like it is. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. As I mentioned, I have with me Mark Young. Marks, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So tell me, why do you put yourself out there and write these columns?
Well, I guess it all started, I grew up as an Army brat. I was always taught the values of not only family and honor and duty, but more importantly, country. It's just the way that I was raised. And I, of course, joined the Army myself. When I got out, I was looking for something noble to do, and I got into journalism. And at first, journalism was kind of a noble profession for me. Things changed, obviously, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But the bottom line is someone has to start telling the truth, because the media stopped telling the truth. I'm not a big fan of getting out there and doing stuff like this, but someone has to do it. And I have the knowledge and the background to talk about the things that need to be talked about, that, the American people deserve the truth, and they're just not getting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're doing it. And it certainly sounds like your background has given you the fortitude to be able to do this. So you said that the industry's changed. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, I first noticed it start to change during the Obama administration, and it wasn't so much as them reporting. It wasn't so much the reporting during the Obama administration. It was a lack of reporting. It was a lack of information that people were getting. I had mentioned this before to some people, but it still amazes me today that, Obama supporters with a straight face can tell you that it's the only presidential administration that didn't have a scandal, when it's just an outrageous statement to make. But so, there you started to figure out the difference between from Obama to Trump. The difference was the media just turned to flat out misinformation and telling lies, whereas during the Obama administration it was a lack of information. So you try to figure out which one is more dangerous, and in the end they both are, because when the media stops telling the American people the truth, whether it's through misinformation or whether it's a lack of information, then you wind up with the same problem.
Yeah, I suppose definitely both have their problems for sure. And I hope that we can get out there and with your efforts provide all the information that's necessary. Can you tell me, how do you come up with the ideas for your stories?
Well, Joe Biden is a pretty easy process to follow. He represents everything that I don't like about politics. He's a career politician. He has a 50-year record of failures, and now he's in charge of the free world. And that's a very scary thing, as we've seen over the past 12 months alone.
Yeah.
So it's been one cycle after another. So he almost keeps me a little too busy. I really want to focus a lot more on what's happening with local politics, and there's a lot going on there. But it's remarkable what's happening with this administration. So all I have to do is turn on the news and see what Joe Biden said lately, and I'm like, I can write a column out of that.
Or two or three or four, right?
Almost at 50 now.
Yeah, wow. And that is remarkable to think that we started on this journey not that long ago, and you are approaching your 50th column. And so kudos to you. I think that shows as well that there is a hunger for a conservative outlet. And, what is exciting is that not only are you able to express those opinions that way, but now we get to also give it a voice. And so, that's got to make you feel happy and proud.
It's really important. And if it, thank God for you that you started the Manatee Herald where you can still do actual news, but maintain those conservative values. I, of course, am different. I'm an opinion writer now, so I get to say a little bit more of what I feel like the actual environment is. But yeah, without this kind of outlet, what does Manatee County have as far as conservative values in getting their news? You have a litany of liberal outlets, and I'm not trying to be sour grapes on the Manatee Herald, but they're owned by McClatchy. It's a left-wing media organization that I personally witnessed through the Trump administration. Multiple biased information that was being put out there, and them running with the typical stories a lot of other media were doing without the actual facts. Then you have the Sarasota paper, which is, how do I describe that paper? I after competing with them for 8 years, I know how they do business, and they don't do it well. And they're fairly on the liberal side as well, because they cover a liberal county. People don't think there's such a difference between Manatee County and Sarasota County as far as politics are concerned. And then you have the few online outlets that, the Brandon Times, that's operated by Joe McClatch, who is well known for his liberal outlook on things, and it shows up in their reporting. You have, I'd say the best probably neutral outlet outside of what we're doing is probably the Observer. What you said is 100% right. There's a hunger for actual information, and that information coming from a place of conservative values.
Yeah, and I want to say I appreciate everything that you do as an opinion writer as well, because I know that was sort of thrown in there at the beginning, and that gives you the freedom to really say and express your feelings on a whole wide variety of things, and so that's fun. And as far as those other outlets go, I don't see them necessarily as competition, although we're all competing for news and eyes and everything else. I think that they're all competing against themselves for their own set. And as you have accurately shown, that they're through process of elimination with Manatee Herald, there really isn't a direct competitor necessarily, since we are focused on the conservative values. And with Manatee County being a very conservative area, that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to fill that void. I felt like there was a hunger for news that just wasn't being provided, one that was more in line with our principles and our values and just our daily lives as well. So thanks again for doing those. When it comes to local politics, any ideas on some stories that may be coming up?
Well, as we know, there's some legislation running through Tallahassee right now that may require everybody who wasn't up for election this election cycle to be up for election. That's going to cause chaos, because everybody who knew that this was their election cycle has had a long time to prepare, already doing their ground campaigns and this and that, and their fundraising and stuff like that. So by the time this legislation may get passed, we're talking weeks, to really get ready. The primaries are in August, but qualifications, I believe, end in June. That's not a lot of time for not only the incumbents to get ready, but for someone who may have thought about running against them and 2 years from now, all of a sudden having to get into the fray as well. So it's going to cause a lot of chaos, could disrupt some elections, because you never know how an election is going to go anyway. So you throw in the X factor, and it could get very interesting very quickly. Other than that, there are some important elections coming up. It's really important that people get involved with the primaries. They're historically very low turnout, and we have some really good candidates that are running in the primaries that may make a difference in the long run. The incumbents have the advantage in the primaries because of the low turnout, and I'm not saying anything yet about the sitting incumbents, but we got to give these primary challengers a shot at getting their message out.
No, that makes sense. And with, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be rooting for chaos and craziness and disruption. But as a news outlet, I sort of thrive on it because that certainly means that we have plenty of news to cover.
Of course.
And sounds like the candidates are going to keep us very busy. And, it'll be our spot here, Manatee Herald. We're not going to make any endorsements coming out of the primary. We may get into that when it goes to the general election. But we want to make sure that we give all the candidates fair time. So, I want to make sure that we make an invitation to any candidate that wants to join us here. We'd love to have you. You can come on and give your platform. And whether it's Mark or myself doing the interview, certainly giving you a chance to talk out to Manatee County in general, as well as primarily the conservatives who are tuning in to our new show here. So that's great.
And I think the interesting races to watch, always at the county commission level, is going to get very interesting. And I agree. I think Republicans, I don't think it's necessary to get involved in the primaries, especially the Republican primaries. Let them get their messages out there. Let the better candidate win and move on and hopefully keep their word and actually promote conservative values, because we haven't had a lot of that from some of the Republican incumbents that have been around for a while. But the school board races will be interested because they're getting a lot of people that are starting to jump in to kind of like say enough is enough what's going on within the school district. So we have some newcomers coming in, which is great. It's always great to see people stepping up like yourself.
Thank you.
And that's just awesome. It's just so encouraging to see people say, you know what, I'm not happy with the way things are going. I think I can make a difference, and I'm going to do it. And putting yourself out there, you talk about me putting myself out there. This is nothing. Putting yourself out there as a candidate is the scrutiny that you undergo during that process is pretty intense. So, I admire what you're doing, and I admire what a lot of our Republicans are doing right now as far as just getting involved.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and it's eye-opening, the whole process of campaigning and getting out and talking to folks and putting yourself out there. It is sort of next level. It is invasive at times. I wish there was some lines to be drawn, but look, who am I to draw those lines? I don't know where they are, and I think we should be fairly transparent anyway. With that being said about the school board, I know that you follow a lot of those topics fairly closely, as well as a number of the other ones. And we've talked about the 1 mil tax. Are there any things that special interest things that you want to talk about?
Not so much special interest things with the school board or even at the county level. The biggest thing for me is just getting these actual conservatives out there and doing what they're doing, because there are just too many people that know Manatee County is a Republican stronghold. So you see a lot of these candidates just throwing an R behind their name or in front of their name, and they're not really Republicans. They don't carry that conservative value, the way that it needs to be, especially on the school board. Supporting, tax and spend policies and not holding, just the school board, for example, and to a certain extent the county commission, don't hold the people that work for them accountable. They're in charge of the county, they're in charge of the school board, and they don't act like it. I keep saying it's just a waste of space. You're just a butt in a chair. I mean, do something. Do your job. People elected you to do something. That's not always the case. I'm not saying every single one of them is not worth being there, but I would say a good majority of them probably don't need to be there anymore.
Yeah. The school board's a little bit tricky, at least as of right now, because that's a nonpartisan race. Is that right? Yeah.
But they're still Republicans and Democrats, whether they call themselves one or not.
Correct. And I believe there's some legislation, I'm not sure exactly where it is, so hopefully it's still alive, but that may change that so that the school board does become a partisan race, so that you will know a little bit more about the person that you're electing. Speaking of that, you've talked about conservative values a couple of times. Tell us a little bit what makes a conservative.
It's a great question. Conservatives are I always just kind of like to say, because conservatives are conservative in nature. That's kind of why we're called conservatives. We don't get loud. We don't get out there and make a bunch of noise and do all this complaining. We just expect people to actually do their jobs, because conservatives do their jobs. But conservative values are very simple. It's faith in God. For me, it's faith in God. It's duty, honor, and country, always. It's taking care of your family, and it's just constantly doing the right thing. And it's less government, get the government out of our business. We saw what happened during the pandemic. This is why we saw how quickly the government can take control of your life, and I think that's really scary. And I think that's why conservatives need to make this big push. And of course, conservatives generally tend to believe that we need a strong military. As we're saying now, we can't get caught flat-footed ever. People think these kind of things can't happen, and they live in this bubble, and it's just not reality. And it's infuriating to see every single time Democrats come in office. I mean, it's tax and spend, it's cut the military. Oh, let's take the military budget and throw it away on some study that $200,000 to study shrimp on a treadmill. That's insane.
Yeah,
that's crazy. I mean, $200,000 is nothing to the federal government, but it's a lot of money to me.
Right.
I don't want my money going to stuff like that. I mean, spend it wisely, and I think that's what conservatives really believe in. Yeah, we have to pay taxes. But take that money and spend it wisely. Just don't throw it down the toilet on dumb stuff.
That's right. Health, safety, and welfare, right?
Right.
Yes, very good. And I know from local taxes, obviously we're not buying fighter jets, but we can certainly support our local law enforcement agencies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so, I appreciate that.
I wouldn't mind if they had a little F-15 fighter if they needed one. Do what you got to do. Take the criminals off the street and put them away.
Yes.
Lock them up.
Yes. How does that make you feel when you see the criminals just back on the streets time and time again?
It's infuriating. And you know what? It happens here in Manatee County. It happens all the time. I mean, look, I've lived all over this country. Manatee County has some of the best law enforcement that I've seen anywhere that I've ever lived. I mean, the leadership, the officers, the deputies, right on down the road, with every last one of them are fantastic people. They care about what they're doing. They love their community because they're part of the community, right? So, yeah. I wish there was a little bit tougher prosecution going on too, but by the time the judge gets hold of it, I mean, I covered crime for a long time here in Manatee County, and you look at these people's arrest records. You see these cases come on the national news where they're like, this guy had a rap sheet this long. How was he ever even getting out on bond? It's the same thing here in Manatee County, and it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to tell people, judges tend to slip by during these election cycles. And people really need to start paying attention to what they're doing, because it's just way too many times that I've done a story on some murder, gone back and look at his rap sheet, and it goes back 10 years. There's 30 or 40 times he's been arrested. Why is this guy out on the street?
Yeah, so no matter how good the law enforcement do their job, if the prosecution or the laws that we have aren't tough enough on crime, then they're just going to be out there there, and the law enforcement's going to have to go and catch them all again.
Right, and I feel for the law enforcement that are in some of these cities where they really push that whole defund the police nonsense. At least we haven't had that kind of ridiculous stuff going on here in Manatee County. So you take these cities like Chicago or New York, and they're not only having to battle these woke DAs who won't put these people away and are soft on crime and starting to make felonies misdemeanors, and then you throw in the whole defund the police movement. Now, what kind of motivation is that for an officer to wake up, put on that badge and gun, and go out and run into danger?
Yeah.
When the guy that they're running after, who may turn around and shoot at them, will be out on the street the next day. It's insanity.
Insanity. Yeah, it has to be. Let me switch gears on you, because I want to make sure that we cover something else that, I know your background. I want to say thank you again for your service to our country.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. And I know that you also are involved in helping out some of the local vets. Can you tell us about some of the things that you're doing there?
Yeah, we got some things rolling. We're working. We're trying to get something up and running with 941 Local. It's veteran owned and operated. It'll be a little bit kind of like a entertainment guide of what's going on around Manatee County and Sarasota County. Part of that, one of our partners runs 941 Vets, which is kind of like, I hate to call it a middleman or something like that, but he's basically organized all these veteran-owned businesses and stuff. They're talking about doing like a trade show pretty soon like that. I mean, there are a lot more veteran-owned businesses in this area than I even realized, and I think it's really important. I mean, do your shopping, get yourself the fair deal, but take a second look at these veteran-owned businesses and know that you're supporting these guys coming back from having to do some horrible things and readjusting to life, and they deserve a chance to get kind of like that. It's not a helping hand, it's a hand up.
Yeah.
And they're doing what they need to do. And these guys, God bless them, give them credit. And veterans are historically known for, being organized, on time, professional, and getting the job done. So you can count on veteran-owned businesses.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I know several vets, and I know that the services, the tasks that they've learned in the military don't always translate word for word with public service or public offices, but certainly the values that have been instilled, the work effort that's been instilled, all of those things just, I think give them the chance to learn, and you'll end up with a better employee that way, for sure. So, Mark, we've talked some about the elections coming up. It's going to be an exciting time. We certainly have a lot of candidates. We're going to have a lot of news to cover there. But for the folks that aren't running, how can they get involved? How can they get educated about the candidates other than tuning into our show? For sure, they'll learn a lot that way. But how do they get involved?
Well, be careful where you get your information. That's the number one thing. Like you said, I think people will get the honest truth here at the Manatee Herald. You'll get the blunt truth from me. People, from what I understand, there's been a big problem trying to get poll workers and things like that. We need more Republican volunteers at these polls to see what's going on. Now, many, and I know Sarasota County is paying attention to this too. We especially, because the whole elections office in Sarasota County is a very liberal organization. I know some people who have applied for to be part of the poll processes and Sarasota County got denied because they were Republican. I was told, I haven't verified this yet, that the first thing that they're asking people is what party are you registered with, and as soon as they say Republican, all of a sudden they're not hearing back from these people anymore. That's certainly not the case in Manatee County. I mean, Manatee County, like everything else, is fairly Republican controlled, but I've heard some scuttle about some issues with voter registration here in Manatee County. So, I mean, we've seen what happened elsewhere. Again, you can never make that assumption that it can't happen here. Well, it can. I mean, Mike does a fantastic job at the election the supervisor of elections office as far as making sure everything's on the up and up. But that doesn't mean we still don't have that responsibility as voters and citizens to do a public service and get involved with something like that. So Republican poll workers are really needed, and I would encourage someone who enjoys the political process. And for me, the political process never ends. It's always election cycle for me, but for someone who enjoys that process and enjoys watching, democracy play out, get involved, and that's a great way to do it.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to be respectful of the viewers' time. I really appreciate you coming by today, sharing all these views. We get to know you so much by your writing and your style, so to be able to put a face and a voice and a personality behind all that, I think that really will help connect to the readers and everything else. And this way they can reach out to you and they can ask you some more questions. Would love to have you back a lot. So hopefully, with your normal column, we can make this a regular thing.
Absolutely. And God bless America.
God bless America. Well, thank you very much. See you all.